I have seen the future, and it is Polish?
Ale nie bój pan żaby.
That's right, I've already played the next big indie survival horror hit, and I can't tell you when it's coming out. It doesn't have a release date, and in fact, it doesn't even have a Kickstarter date listed yet. I originally heard about this game from it constantly popping up in my feed just about every single time they posted a new tweet, but it's kinda easy to see why all their posts are blowing up. I mean, let's just take a look at some of these. You've got the obviously slick pixel art and heavy survival horror aesthetics you might expect, but they throw in a curveball by featuring not just one or two, but 4 different perspectives so far. There's side-scrolling segments, first-person driving, over-the-shoulder combat, and isometric exploration. The game features a really nice blend of low-poly models and hand-drawn pixelated objects too. Holstin presents a really strong, cohesive style that makes you almost forget it's both 2D and 3D mashed up. Add to that the numerous perspectives, and you've got a really tall order for any indie team. So huge props to the artists and programmers who are making this happen. But you didn't come here just to listen to me say, look at these viral tweets. The reason I decided to do a video on Holstin is because there's already a pretty in-depth demo available to the public. So I gave it a shot, now let's talk about it. The demo build I played was broken up into 2 or 3 major parts. I say 2 or 3 because there are 2 distinctly separate parts of the demo, but the second part also includes an endless roguelike mode once you've finished it. The first half of the demo shows a very Resident Evil or Silent Hill-esque exploration and puzzle solving segment, while the second half is an extended tutorial for all the more active gameplay. You know, stuff like stealth and combat. Of course it all looks great, even in the early stages, and probably unsurprisingly, it plays pretty well too. I think the demo segments were executed well as a showcase of many of the game's features, even if they did drag on a bit longer than I would have liked. I spent about 15 to 20 minutes on each part of the demo, adding up to about an hour in total, which I'm sure is great for their diehard fans that are itching for any more content they can get, but I think the demo would have been better as a single, cohesive experience. You know, let me do a little exploration, talk to some NPCs, get a bit of lore about what's going on, and possibly solve a puzzle along the way. Transition that to a short tutorial on the game mechanics, and then cap it off with a playground to make use of those aforementioned mechanics, and you've got a pretty solid demo. And even though I enjoyed exploring a spooky old house while solving little puzzles along the way, it almost felt like an entire level from any other tiny indie game, not strictly a short demo segment. Likewise, the combat tutorial section consisted of not 1 or 2, but 5 individual levels, each one basically explaining just one element of the game and having you try it out. I mean, I've played other survival horror games, and I know that you can pick up items and shoot enemies. I can quickly understand what a dodge button is supposed to do, and the concept of shooting limbs to disable enemies is pretty common. I totally understand the need to tutorialize and explain things to players, but devoting an entire level to each element felt a little hand-holdy. Heavy tutorial segments like these always remind me of like Ubisoft games where you spend the first hour doing missions like tail this NPC, but don't forget to press C to crouch. You gotta remember to press X to perform a takedown. Compare this to most survival horror games, even AAA ones like Resident Evil, where you're given maybe 10 minutes of story and tutorial before being immediately thrust into danger. But hey, this is an early demo build and they could always trim things down later on. I just had to throw in my 2 cents. Anyways, once you finish the puzzly exploration level and the 5 tutorial levels, you unlock an endless roguelike mode. This plays mostly like you'd expect: run down a subway tunnel full of monsters, search around for weapons and supplies, and see how far you can make it. It's nice to have, even if a little basic, but I do give them props for devoting the time to develop an endlessly replayable mode in an early demo build. And with that out of the way, what else can I say about Holstin so far? Let's see. I dig the sketchy characters they've got going on. I can't understand Polish, but the subtitles along with their tone of voice makes it seem like everyone in the world just kinda hates talking to you. Again, great job on the pixel art portraits here. They really capture that kinda grungy feel the game's world has going on. I didn't get to experience any driving segments in the demo, so I am looking forward to see how they pull those off. They've even been hinting at having a 3rd demo on the way, potentially tied to their Kickstarter? I don't know, just guessing here. If this was any other indie horror Kickstarter, I'd say what they already have here is more than enough to run a successful campaign. But who knows how high their goal will be. especially given the fact that this isn't your standard 1 or 2 person team. Instead, there's actually about 15 or so people working on this game. I know, that number surprised me at first too, but I guess it makes sense given how polished everything looks so far. Regardless, I think this game's gonna be pretty big when it finally does drop. Not too long ago, I said something similar about the game Sorry We're Closed, and just look at how much money they've managed to rake in the past couple months. But speaking of recent videos, that reminds me that I was just talking about Peripeteia, another big Polish indie game making waves. Are we entering some sort of golden age for Polish indie games? Are we gonna see every game featuring vodka and pierogi as consumables? Sorry if I'm offending any of the Polish fans, I don't really know much about your country besides that and some rare Poland mentioned memes, but I'm absolutely here to check out all the cool games you guys come up with, like Holstin, who you could toss a follow if you think they're worth supporting, or me, who's not Polish in any way, but would still greatly appreciate you subscribing. Anyways, do widzenia, friends. I hope to see you all in the next one.